The Philippines is a nation of breathtaking beauty. It boasts pristine beaches, lush jungles, and a rich cultural tapestry. Yet, this paradise sits on the fault lines of history. The Philippines has been caught in the cross-currents of great power rivalry. It has struggled to forge its own destiny. This struggle is most evident in its complex relationship with the United States. The relationship has been marked by both cooperation and conflict. It began with the brutal U.S. takeover of the Philippines in 1898. It continues to this day. The U.S. and the Philippines are now bound by a security alliance. This alliance is facing its greatest test yet. The reason is China's rise. This video explores the turbulent history of US-Philippine relations. It examines the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. The Philippines is at a crossroads. It must choose between its loyalty to an old ally and the uncertainties of a new world order. The US-Philippine relationship began in the crucible of war. In 1898, the United States, eager to expand its influence, intervened in the ongoing Cuban War of Independence. This intervention quickly escalated into the Spanish-American War. The Philippines, a Spanish colony for over 3 centuries, became a key battleground. The U.S. Navy, led by Commodore George Dewey, decisively defeated the Spanish fleet in Manila Bay. This victory, coupled with the support of Filipino revolutionaries led by Emilio Aguinaldo, paved the way for the Spanish surrender. However, the victory over Spain did not bring freedom to the Philippines. The U.S., instead of granting the islands their independence, decided to claim them as its own. This decision ignited the Philippine-American War, a brutal conflict that lasted for 3 years. The war resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Filipinos. It left a bitter legacy of resentment. The U.S., having positioned itself as a liberator, became a colonizer. This set the stage for a relationship marked by both dependence and resistance. World War II brought the U.S. and the Philippines even closer. In 1941, the Japanese Empire, seeking to control the Pacific, launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. This attack brought the U.S. into the war. It also led to the Japanese invasion of the Philippines. American and Filipino soldiers fought side by side against the Japanese. They endured hardship and immense suffering. The Bataan Death March, a horrific episode in which thousands of American and Filipino prisoners of war died from Japanese brutality, became a symbol of their shared sacrifice. The war, though devastating, solidified a bond between the two nations. This bond was forged in blood and fire. The war's end, however, ushered in a new era. The Philippines, granted independence in 1946, emerged from the conflict battered and depleted. It looked to the U.S. for support. The U.S., eager to maintain its strategic foothold in the Pacific, was more than willing to provide it. This dynamic laid the foundation for the post-war relationship. It was a relationship characterized by American aid, military presence, and increasing Filipino dependence. The Cold War cast a long shadow over the US-Philippine relationship. The Philippines became a crucial ally in America's fight against communism. The US established major military bases in the country. These bases included Clark Air Base and Subic Bay Naval Base. These bases served as launch pads for operations in Korea and Vietnam. They also served as a deterrent against Soviet expansion. The US also poured economic and military aid into the Philippines. This assistance was meant to bolster the country's defenses. It was also meant to prevent the spread of communist ideology. The U.S. supported the Philippine government even as it grappled with corruption and insurgency. This support, however, came at a price. The Philippines' dependence on the U.S. deepened. It hampered the development of independent foreign policy. The presence of U.S. bases also became a source of social tension. Many Filipinos felt that their country was being treated as an American outpost rather than a sovereign nation. This resentment simmered beneath the surface. It would eventually boil over. Section 5. A Declaration of Independence, the closure of U.S. bases. The end of the Cold War marked a turning point in U.S.-Philippine relations. In 1991, the Philippine Senate, in a historic vote, rejected a new treaty that would have extended the lease on U.S. military bases. This decision was a watershed moment. It signaled the Philippines' desire to chart its own course. The closure of the bases in 1992 was a powerful symbol of this newfound independence. The decision to close the bases was driven by a confluence of factors. These factors included the end of the Cold War, growing anti-American sentiment, and a desire for greater national sovereignty. The closure was a gamble. The Philippines was giving up a security guarantee. It was also giving up significant economic benefits. However, it was a gamble that many Filipinos felt was worth taking. The closure of the bases ushered in a period of uncertainty. The Philippines, no longer under the U.S. security umbrella, had to grapple with new challenges. It had to redefine its role in the region. It had to find new partners. The closure marked a definitive break from the past. It set the stage for the complex realities of the 21st century. Section 6. A Nation Adrift, Post-Base Vulnerabilities, and the Looming Shadow of China. The departure of the U.S. military left a security vacuum in the Philippines. This vacuum was quickly filled by a new threat: China. China's growing assertiveness in the South China Sea, particularly its claims over disputed territories like the Spratly Islands, posed a direct challenge to Philippine sovereignty. The Philippines, with its limited military capabilities, found itself outmatched by its powerful neighbor. China's construction of artificial islands, militarization of existing outposts, and aggressive actions against Philippine fishing vessels heightened tensions. The Philippines, once again, found itself caught in a geopolitical contest. It was a contest between a rising superpower and a former colonial power. This situation exposed the Philippines' vulnerabilities. It also highlighted the limitations of its independent foreign policy. The Philippines sought to assert its claims through international law. It filed a case against China at the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague. However, China refused to recognize the court's jurisdiction. It ignored the ruling in favor of the Philippines. This left the Philippines with few options. It had to confront a powerful and assertive China. Section 7. A New Pact, a New Era. The Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement. Faced with growing Chinese pressure, the Philippines began to reevaluate its security relationship with the United States. In 2014, the two countries signed the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, or EDCA. This agreement allowed for the increased rotational presence of U.S. troops in the Philippines. It also allowed for the upgrading of Philippine military facilities. The EDCA marked a significant shift in Philippine foreign policy. It was a step back towards a closer military alliance with the U.S. The agreement was driven by necessity. The Philippines needed help to counter China's growing assertiveness. It also reflected a recognition that the U.S. remained a vital security partner. The EDCA, however, was not without its critics. Some Filipinos viewed it as a betrayal of the country's hard-won independence. They argued that it would drag the Philippines into a conflict with China. They argued that it would make the Philippines a target. Despite these concerns, the EDCA went into effect. It became a cornerstone of the US-Philippine relationship in the 21st century. Section 8. Between a rock and a hard place, navigating US-China tensions. The Philippines today finds itself walking a tightrope. It is caught between its alliance with the US and its economic dependence on China. The US remains a crucial security partner. It provides military aid. It provides strategic support. China, however, is the Philippines' largest trading partner. It is also a major source of investment. This balancing act has become increasingly difficult in recent years. US-China relations have deteriorated sharply. Each side is pressuring the Philippines to choose sides. The Philippines, however, is determined to maintain its strategic autonomy. It wants to avoid becoming entangled in a great power conflict. The Philippines has sought to do this by engaging with both the US and China. It has deepened its security cooperation with the US. It has pursued economic partnerships with China. This delicate balancing act will only become more challenging. The US and China are locked in a long-term strategic competition. The Philippines is caught in the middle. Section 9. The Philippine Dilemma. Balancing sovereignty and security. The Philippines' predicament reflects a broader dilemma facing many countries in the Indo-Pacific. These countries are caught between the established power of the US and the rising power of China. The Philippines' experience offers several important lessons. First, geography matters. The Philippines' proximity to China makes it impossible to ignore the security implications of China's rise. Second, history casts a long shadow. The legacy of US colonialism continues to shape Philippine perceptions of the US. It complicates the relationship. Third, national interest is paramount. The Philippines must prioritize its own security and prosperity. It must not become a pawn in someone else's game. The Philippines' challenge is to navigate these competing pressures. It must find a way to safeguard its sovereignty. It must secure its future. It must do all of this in a volatile and uncertain world. Section 10. A pawn in a larger game, the future of the US-Philippine relationship. The future of the US-Philippine relationship remains uncertain. The relationship will be shaped by a number of factors. These factors include the trajectory of US-China relations, the domestic political climate in both countries, and the evolving security environment in the Indo-Pacific. One thing is clear: the US-Philippine relationship has entered a new chapter. It is a chapter defined by both opportunities and challenges. The US can demonstrate its commitment to the Philippines. It can do this by providing consistent support. It can provide predictable security assistance. The Philippines, for its part, must continue to strengthen its own defenses. It must diversify its partnerships. It must do this to reduce its reliance on any one power. The US-Philippine relationship has the potential to be a stabilizing force in the Indo-Pacific. However, it is essential that this relationship be based on mutual respect. It must be based on shared interests. The Philippines is not a pawn in a larger game. It is a sovereign nation with its own aspirations and its own agency. The US must recognize this if it wants to maintain a strong and enduring partnership.